and welcome to UC Today. My name is Kieran Devlin, and today's session we will be discussing how CX is an untapped differentiator and game changer for MSPs and systems integrators. I am delighted to be joined by Michal Podoski, SVP of Product Management at Akixi. Thanks for joining us, Michal.
Thanks for having me, Kieran. Great to be here.
Before we explore today's topic, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, Michal, and your Akixi journey?
Akixi journey. So as you properly identified, my name is Michal Podoski. I run product management organization in Akixi. Joined the business around 2.5 years ago, and my sole focus was driving innovation. And over the last 2 years, we were able to release a number of pretty interesting products that we will touch on. Hopefully, some of them throughout this interview. We have a lot more in the roadmap hopper for the next year or so to come. So pretty exciting times. Yes.
Absolutely, and it is a prime opportunity to leverage your expertise, Michal. Why do you think CX is still such an untapped differentiator for MSPs and SIs?
This is a good question, and this is one of those topics that in product management, especially, we ask ourselves on a daily basis. Meaning, how do we help our partners differentiate in market? And if you will look at what we believe the voice market is, especially with the advent of all of those broad and big communications platforms like Teams, Webex calling, and Zoom. The question is, how do you compete, and how do you make sure that you have a unique offering in the market that is heavily commoditized, right? And if you will look at what those hyperscalers, how I like to call those big companies, they effectively done to the market, they created a bit of a level playing field in terms of functionality and in terms of pricing, most importantly. And now the question is the usual: how as you said, a managed service providers or a system integrator can create more margin for them. And honestly, how we start looking at this is, well, putting on my product management hat, is we start looking at how users utilize those cloud communication platforms. And if you will look at what we are seeing, is that the first step, if you will, is our first difference towards how voice was served prior to those big systems becoming the new role, is that currently it's not the service provider anymore that dictates configuration and dictates how technology is adopted. Is the user. I mean, you have a IT department, you have administrators that will decide what kind of applications and at what pace they are able to roll out. And this is where what we advise to service providers is that, look, the best way around this problem is to build a strong ecosystem of value-added services, right? Very importantly, those value-added services should be only obtainable, only served through a service provider channel. Because what you can probably see, and what I've mentioned earlier on, is that IT administrator can go to any marketplace and just download something themselves, right? Which immediately diminishes the role of a service provider in such a value chain. So what we are saying is that the ecosystem that those service providers should build, it should be almost like proprietary systems, proprietary applications that can be delivered as a value-added service, right? And then there's the question, what to focus on and invest in. And from our experience, especially with managed service providers and system integrators, the best tools for value-added services to invest in is something that you would be able, as a service provider, to build a consultancy around, right? Because MSPs are I mean, one of the most impressive companies in this ecosystem that we work is because they have a plethora of knowledge. They've been pretty much on the forefront of innovation, trying to integrate a lot of different technologies together. So I think that they can act with their customers as a trusted advisor. But in order to do that, you need data points to act on, right? So this is what we are trying to at least advocate to this kind of companies is like invest in the value-added services which will have analytical capabilities, like we offer our analytics tools that will allow you to maintain this recurring proactive coaching method with those SIs. Another vector that has been discussed a lot in the industry. I've heard this coming up in the industry events, which is promising, is how does a service provider tap into other parallel offerings, if you will, in IT. And what I mean by that is you have this user that has telephony, and this user usually has other services, like for instance, a CRM license. However, what we've seen is the MSPs we work with, they don't really sell CRM. So the question is, how does an MSP tap into the CRM stream in order to be able to deliver additional value and somehow participate in this part of the value chain, which is where CRM integration comes in, which also allows the MSP to participate beyond telephony.
And you touched it on there, Michal, about that shift that MSPs are undergoing, where they're shifting their value proposition from we deliver telephony to we improve your customer incomes.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give MSPs currently undergoing that transition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it will come back to what I started unraveling earlier on, is how to build a value chain, which is a value-added services chain inside your portfolio that will allow to be again, I will use the same term, a trusted advisor, because again, I mean, I think that something that we've noticed being a defining factor for MSPs and mostly their success nowadays is we've noticed that delivering infrastructure is infrastructure, as in how I like to call it plumbing, which is currently dial tone or just services to connect those hyperscaler cloud platforms. That is not enough. That will mostly make a service provider act like they're yet another vendor, and I use this term for a reason. Vendor delivering an application, right, to a cloud service, because how I think, and this is probably the biggest shift for service providers. I mean, service providers were usually, if you would draw a network diagram, right? They were this cloud in the middle, right? Everything was connected to service provider. Now it's a bit different, right? Because this cloud, if we will take Teams as an example, Teams is becoming the center of everything, right? And now the question is how to make a service provider, instead of becoming yet another application that connects into this Teams cloud, how do you make it a bigger bubble that delivers more value for this Teams application, right? And this is where we are coming into the point of what we are seeing with our partners. If you will simply deliver applications, like in case of Teams, it will be Operator Connect, you're becoming just one of the many service providers. However, if you will become a advisory, you will take an advisory role to this customer who just rolled out Teams as telephony, and you will start advising them on how efficient they are in serving customers over this telephony medium, This means that you can share your best practice using some sort of a measurement technology that would come from a vendor like Akixi. So what I'm trying to say is elevating yourself from this level of you're delivering only telephony because that's enough to maintain the business model into we're delivering telephony, we're delivering professional services, we're delivering uh, actual tangible value to the end customers, right? And again, what I've mentioned probably multiple times is that the biggest change which we've seen and sometimes is confusing, I've noticed for some service providers, is that the center of control for how this new telephony world works is not anymore with the service provider. It is with the user. So it is very important also to have in mind that all of a sudden the decision makers around how to implement the telephony inside a company is not with a specific telephony department. Those don't exist, practically speaking, anymore. It was an IT department, and it's very interesting that the people from IT departments, they have close to no idea about how telephony works, and this is where companies like MSPs can come in and honestly influence or help those IT departments roll out telephony properly. I think that is the most powerful way of looking at how MSPs can thrive in this new era of voice communication.
And Michal, what role do data and analytics play in proving CX improvements in voice and communications projects?
Mhm. Yeah, so again, I think I will try to answer this question from the perspective of a product manager. So how we how we look at this is firstly when we design any functionality, we look at a use case. And one use case in particular was something that we've noticed our service providers have most success in when delivering our technology. And this would be the informal call center. There is a lot of buzz in the market around this, but I will try to explain this in the simplest possible words what that is, right? So an informal call center, if you would try to compare it to a normal call center, the main difference is that currently, especially with products like Teams or Webex calling, you don't really have agents, as in per se agents, that would be simply hired to receive calls and place calls again. What you would see is employees, normal knowledge workers, or people that are tasked with sales roles that would be responsible partially for picking up calls from customers and placing calls to customers, a simply small part of the role, which means that this creates a lot of interesting dynamics in how all of a sudden this contact center, which had dedicated staff this staff was available either constantly or based on some shifts, all of a sudden this staff is let's call it a virtual resource. You'd never know how many people you have. So one of the things we've noticed our partners, especially managed service providers, can do a lot of impact with is when advising their customers, is they're trying to help them with problems like staffing, right? That's one of the biggest issues. And this staffing, in order to advise a customer, oh, you need to probably focus on making sure that some of your salespeople have, for instance, a booked hour or two per day that they will be available to picking up the calls, which then we will translate into queuing configuration. But in order to do this, right, because this is what I just mentioned is an outcome, you need to come in with data, right? And this is where MSPs use our reporting, and they show this is the number of list of abundant calls distributed across time. Then you see how much volume you have in specific for specific types of conversations, which allow you to first of all decide how many people of a specific skill you need, to which queue they should be assigned, and when they should be available. Then, as I mentioned, in many cases, it just means that some people will have a hour or two per day just booked to be available to pick up calls. And this is even more important if you will look at the fact that currently, especially with those cloud communications, those with the say next generation of UC, telephony is a afterthought, right? So if you would go on Teams and you would start presenting to someone, or you would forget to set your presence from something else than D&D to being available, all of a sudden you disappear from the queue. You cannot take the call anymore, right? So this is where a managed service provider can come in, and with the available tools, for instance, from Akixi, they can advise of how build a process around this, right? Because in the end, it needs to translate into process. So making a big loop, in essence, I like to call informal call center. It's not really a thing or a department, if you will. It's a process. Informal call center is how you will implement the way of working using some analytics.
Terrific. And one final question before I let you go, Michal. How important is it for MSPs to provide ongoing insight to their customers post deployment, not just as a one and done setup?
Well, we've touched on this, Kieran, today, and I believe that, look, to put it really in basic terms, I honestly believe if you want to succeed as a service provider currently, uh, you need to move from selling purely dial tone to offering more value on top of it, right? And this would mean that what we've touched on earlier on today, if service providers will continue delivering purely dial tone connectivity and calling services, I mean, realistically speaking, barrier to entry to provide such services and being listed on those, let's call them big marketplaces for service providers that can provide such services to the modern UC tools, this barrier to entry will be lower and lower, which means that the prices will get lower and lower, margins would get lower and lower. So my least favorite term in the world, race to the bottom, but this is kind of how it looks like, right? Are we there yet? No, I mean, I think that this business will still generate good profits for years to come, but is the trend there? Yeah, I think so. So how to get away from this trap is exactly what we've discussed today, being able to act as a trusted advisor, create yourself a value-added services portfolio where you would be able to act as this trusted advisor based on the data sets you will get from this portfolio. Finally, try to escape this trap of we are selling telephony services to a user, to this user uses some other products like CRM. And we are not offering CRM being an MSP, but we can plug ourselves into a CRM that was sold by someone else and deliver value into bridging those two completely different technologies. And by bridging, I mean there is a plethora of super smart use cases, from storing transcription in CRM down to simply displaying who is calling me currently in real time, or who called me, to make reports user readable. Because telephone numbers are great. I think this is a very good system that was crafted the last century, but they are not friendly to human readers.
Great. Well, I think that's a very compelling note in which to end today's conversation. So thank you, Michal, for being here.
Thanks, Kieran, for having me. It was a pleasure.
And if you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share on social media, and we'll see you next time. I've been Kieran Devlin of UC Today. Thanks for watching.